You and I have both experienced that pain. You strive for your justice, and I strive for mine.
And what's going on, Read My Lips people? We are back. Back like we ain't never left, baby. I've come up with some really exclusive footage of the one and only Pete Buttigieg. And now this comes after the interview, I don't want to say interview, but the live stream he had with Yang. I just thought it was interesting timing. So Pete Buttigieg is planning on running again in 2024. And he's trying to get in touch with the black community. He's trying already to sort of build a connection with the African-American community. And, you know, we've got footage of that. So we're going to play that footage and come back.
To your left, here we go right. You lean to your left, right. Left, right. Here we go. Left, right. Left, here we go right. You lean to your on the beat. We gonna drop it. Here we go. Watch this. Watch this.
That's just too funny. That's too funny. Pete Buttigieg, ladies and gentlemen. So we've got some Yang news for you guys. We got some things a cooking. We got some things a brewing. So the first thing I want to talk about is Yang and the UFC. Yang's gonna be kicking people's heads off. No, he's not. Yang's not going to be in the UFC, but as it stands, Yang actually is a fan of the UFC. He loves it, actually. He's just not happy with the way it's being run. And I found this interesting. I found this as an interesting piece, and I just wanted to share it with you guys. So, former Democratic presidential nominee Andrew Yang hosted his bachelor party in Las Vegas in 2010 to attend the Ultimate Fighter 12 finale. He still watches every mixed martial arts bout that he can. Even so, Yang has grown deeply critical of UFC and the President Dana White's treatment of its fighters. During his run for president, Yang unveiled a policy proposal that would empower mixed martial artists to unionize and collectively bargain, the first of its kind for a presidential candidate. Seems Yang's doing a lot of firsts. Yang's doing a lot of things that other people just were afraid to dip their toes in. Yang also sought to broaden the provisions of the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act to encompass combat sports. Passed by Congress in 2000, the Ali Act aimed to provide boxers protection from exploitation and anti-competitive practices. So this is pretty interesting, because this is obviously something that does not get talked about. This is something that gets swept under the rug quite frequently, to the point where I knew little about this until I did some research and investigating upon it. And very interesting. This is very interesting. But without advocates in the White House, the road ahead for Yang's proposal is going to be a tough one. In 2018, the National Labor Relations Board dismissed fighter Leslie Smith's complaint alleging that UFC retaliated against her for threatening to unionize. Representative Mark Wayne Mullen proposed legislation in 2016 that would have amended the Ali Act, but it received little support. Meanwhile, UFC continues to lobby against any further provisions. So, Cenk Uygur just had sort of like a hiccup. Are we going to call it a hiccup? We can call it a hiccup, I guess, against unionization. And unions are a scarce thing nowadays. You don't really see them like that. I think the last big union issue that I heard of was when like the people from Stop and Shop, did a strike, and they striked for 2 weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. And unions had their backs and stuff like that, and people really at that point was like, oh, unions are a good thing, but they're not often talked about. I know Bernie was pro-union. I believe Yang is obviously pro-union. But a lot of these companies want nothing to do with it. And as soon as they hear that you're trying to unionize, they chop that shit off by the legs. They don't want it. They don't want that shit. UFC 249, which is in Jacksonville, Florida, is set to become the first major American sport to compete live since widespread stay-at-home orders were enacted in response to the coronavirus pandemic. In a phone interview before Saturday night's card, Yang spoke about how he would regulate UFC and why fans should care about his proposed reforms. So in this interview that he did, they asked him some questions. I'll touch upon some of the questions, not every single one of them. One of the things they asked him is the fan in you excited for UFC to come back, or is the critic in you concerned about the organization's insistence on expediting its return, which a lot of places are insistent on expediting their return. And Yang said, if you're to imagine a sport that could come back safely, it would be a sport like UFC, where you have only 2 fighters in the ring and 1 referee. It's much harder if you think about something like the NBA, where you have teams of 12, 15 people are in close proximity on the court. It would make sense to me that the first sport to come back would be like a UFC, and I 100% agree. How far along in your presidential run did you decide to zero in on this issue of empowering MMA fighters? Was it something you had thought deeply about before your run or after you started your campaign? Yang goes on to say, I've been a fan for a long time, and it has angered me more and more that the UFC has been exploiting fighters, including firing Leslie Smith when she tried to organize a union. Then their complaint was then squashed by the Trump administration. Meanwhile, the UFC was valued at billions and billions of dollars. They got a 9-figure contract with ESPN to broadcast events. The UFC's fighters are being paid a small fraction of what they should be getting paid. Their entire valuation is based on the systematic exploitation of these fighters. They're getting paid 10 to 15% of the revenue, whereas the standard for every other major sport is 47 to 50%. So that is a humongous gap. That is a humongous gap.
They always call it massive. Sometimes they say huge.
Wow, that's a huge difference. And it's even fair to say that the people in UFC are endangering themselves almost more than the other sports, almost more than soccer, more than basketball, and I dare say even more than football, even though obviously football comes with a ton of injuries as well. UFC, you're literally going in there to beat the shit out of the other person. That's insane. 10 to 15%, whereas other sports are 47 to 50%. Wow. So they say something interesting. And this ties back into Biden. All right. So they say to Yang, your policy proposals will be difficult to execute without an advocate in the White House to appoint members of the National Labor Relations Board amendable to reclassifying fighters as employees. Republican administrations historically have been averse to unionization. Still, there's no guarantee that under a Democratic administration, enough of their nominees would support an NLRB and will be responsive to complaints such as Smith's. Without you or a similar proponent in the White House, how do you plan on implementing these changes from the outside of the federal government? And that's a really, really good question. And so Yang went on to say, I'm very confident that under a Democratic administration, we can very quickly recognize the economic reality that these fighters have been operating under and can recognize the reality that they are employees and should have the ability to organize and negotiate for a higher proportion of the sport's revenue. I don't need to be president to make that happen. Hold on. Whoo! Wow, I don't need to be president to make that happen. Obviously, I was running for president and would have been thrilled to do it as president, but if there's a Democratic president, we'll still get it done. And then here's the kicker. He goes on to say this. He goes, listen to this. Escuchar, listen. Like, I can frankly just call Joe Biden. I'm going to repeat that. He said, yo, I can frankly just call Joe Biden and say, hey, this is going to seem like something you don't need to care about, but let's do this for the fighters because it's the right thing to do. And I'm very excited to have to make that call.
Damn, son.
So Yang said, yo, I don't got to be president to get this stuff done. I'm the future. So I'll just call Biden and I'll say, and look how he phrased it. He says, hey, this is going to seem like something you shouldn't care about because obviously Biden ain't up on what he should be. This is going to seem like something you shouldn't care about. Here's why you should care. Now let's fix this. That, it may not seem like it, but that's Yang puffing his chest out. That's Yang puffing his chest out a little bit. And goddamn, do I respect it. Wow. Is this a policy that you will lobby Biden to campaign on? Yang says, obviously to me, I'm a fight fan. It's something that's important to me, but it's not something Joe's going to campaign on, probably. It's just something we're going to have to make happen after he becomes president. And there's just so much more. I'm not going to go through the whole interview. They talk about Joe Rogan's podcast, etc. But this was interesting, and this is something important that we should also look into. I love when there's things that seem minuscule or swept under the rug, and then they finally come to light, and there's something we can do about it. And what Yang has done is brought this into the light, and sounds like whether Biden wants to or not, he's going to have to do something about this if he becomes president. I still say that's up in the air, but man, that's dope. Let me know what you guys think of Yang's thoughts on the UFC in the comment section below. And so the last thing I wanted to talk about, guys, was I'm sure you've all heard that, because I covered it. If you're watching my channel, you've seen that I've covered it. Even if you're not watching my channel and you're a first-time viewer, hi. I'm letting you know I covered it. Yang saved the day and sued and got the New York election back up and running. Well, they came out and said they're going to appeal it, which I can't fathom why they think this will go over well. Have they not seen the response to them trying to do what they did in the first place? So they said they're going to appeal. And Andrew Yang came out and said something about that. He said their argument just doesn't make sense. So let's delve into that. Andrew Yang suggested Friday that the New York election officials should do themselves a favor and drop their attempt to cancel the state's Democratic presidential primary. Yang, who successfully sued the State Board of Elections over its cancellation of the June 23rd primary, said that in his first interview since the court ruling that he's confident that the BOE's imminent appeal won't hold any water, and I agree. They're still proceeding with the primaries for other offices and other races. Their argument just doesn't make sense on the face of it. The BOE argues that its presidential primary must be canceled to keep people from going to the polls. I don't know how you're going to grow at the polls. How are you going to grow at the polls? You know what? I'm not even going to get into that. Get your mind out of the gutter. The BOE argues that the presidential primary must be canceled to keep people from going to the polls amid the coronavirus pandemic. Still, the BOE isn't canceling congressional primaries scheduled in 42 out of New York's 62 counties. Manhattan federal judge Annalisa Torres sided with Yang on Tuesday and overturned the BOE's cancellation, saying it was unconstitutional and stripped New York Democrats of their right to vote. BOE has already since filed notice that it will bring a case to the U.S. Court of Appeals. But Yang said the board should just reconsider its priorities and start working on expanding mail-in voting for the June 23rd elections. They have plenty of time. People should be voting by mail, and we have provisions in place for them to be able to do that. I'm thrilled that the district court ruled that depriving millions of voters of the right to vote is illegal, and I'm sure the U.S. Court of Appeals will do the same. I don't even know why they're wasting their time doing this. The U.S. Court of Appeals is going to side with Yang. I'd say it's pretty obvious. A spokesman for BOE did not return a request or a comment. Joe Biden is already the presumptive Democratic nominee to take on Trump in November. But as noted in Yang's lawsuit, voters can still cast primary ballots for others that have since dropped out for candidates like Bernie Sanders in order to elect delegates who can push their point of view at the party's convention in August. I had sent out a tweet. If you're not following me on Twitter yet, what is you doing? TheRealBCereus, Twitter, TheRealBCereus, Instagram. It's up there in the corner. Add me. I want to hear from you guys off of YouTube too. Add me. But I sent out a tweet saying, Andrew Yang saved Bernie's ass. Andrew Yang saved Bernie's ass. And if anybody was in the Bernie camp and was beefing with Yang Gang, this is one of the few times you guys should put down your weapons and say thank you. Because Bernie was complaining about it, but he never took it into action. And even my man Kyle Kalinske came out and said, Yo, thank you, Yang. You saved Bernie's ass.
Okay, so massive shout out to Andrew Yang. I had no idea that he had gotten involved in this and he sued to try to get the election put back on. But, massive credit to Andrew Yang. In a weird roundabout way, it's honestly like Andrew Yang is fighting more for Bernie Sanders and his team than Bernie Sanders is fighting for him and his team. So, I don't know why Bernie wouldn't have been the one to sue to try to, get the election back on, considering they had released a statement and were like, we don't like this. So massive shout out to Andrew Yang. And just so everybody understands, the Democratic Party decided we're going to appeal this decision. So they cancel a Democratic election. A court says, no, you can't do that. And then they go, we disagree. We think we can do it. And they're appealing. And the cover story they're giving everybody is COVID-19. But hold on. The election was originally supposed to be in April, late April. Then they pushed it back to late June, I believe. And now they're like, oh, we got to cancel it because of COVID-19. But you have plenty of time to do an all-mail election. So why would you not transfer to doing the election by the mail? It's because they don't want to. It's because, like I said, they would love to screw the down-ballot candidates.
So, very interesting news. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think the BOE should just give up while the getting's good? Because they're probably going to lose this. And now would be the time to save face. In as little bit of saving face as they can do, now would be the time to do it. But if you go for this appeal and then get your neck stepped on again, you just making yourself look foolish. And they have reasons for doing the things that they're doing. They're trying to hurt the down ballot Democrats. We know what's going on. But let me know your thoughts below in the comment section. I want to hear from you. Don't forget to add me on all social media platforms: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. So if you like what you see, if you like what you hear, please like, comment, subscribe. Just hip thrust that like button. I'd really appreciate it. If you don't, let me know in the comment section why. I'm always down to talk about it. I have a Cash App, a PayPal, and a Venmo link in the description below. Please feel free to donate to the channel. Every little bit helps. Hopefully I'll be talking to you guys soon. Have a good one. Peace.